Okay. So let's go back to our number line here. Make another little sign chart. And we have to put on this thing -1/2, -3, and 1. And don't worry about making them like appropriately like scaled and all that stuff. Just you need to have the numbers in the correct order. You know, you can evenly space them out and whatever. It's fine. Okay. Now, here's what I do though. If it's a 0, make it a solid dot because it's definitely crossing the axis there. And if it's an asymptote, I'm going to make an open circle to remind myself that the function isn't actually obtaining those numbers. It's just flipping around them. Okay? So zeros, solid dots, asymptotes, make them open. But in any event, this splits up our number line, though, into these different intervals that we need to start testing again. Okay? When is it positive? When is it negative? And all that jazz. So we need to pick a number less than -3. So just find your favorite number less than -3 and go for it. So now in this sign chart, though, it's going to be a number divided by a number times a number. So for each one of these that we do, we're going to plug in like that with our sign chart. Okay? So if it's a number less than -3, 2x plus 1, does that come out negative or positive? Negative. What about x plus 3? Still negative, yep. And what about x minus 1? Negative. Okay, so if I take a negative number and I divide it by a negative times a negative, it would still be negative overall, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now, between -3 and -1/2, maybe like -1 or something would be the easiest, I think. You can do that same thing. So a number divided by a number times a number. Okay, so 2x plus 1. If I'm in between here, am I negative or positive on that one? That's negative. X plus 3. Now that's positive, yep. And x minus 1? Negative. So this interval is going to be negative. No. Positive, right? Negative divided by a positive times a negative. This would be negative down here, so negative divided by negative is positive. All right, and then the next interval, maybe choose a 0. So in this one, we've got what on top? Now that's positive. Underneath, positive and negative. So this interval is what? Negative. And then the last interval, all of them should be positive this time, right? Just pick some super huge number and they should all come out positive up there, which would make that interval positive. Yeah. Okay. So we've kind of laid out now where this particular function is positive and negative. And I want to answer the question, when is it greater than or equal to 0? Greater than 0. Positive, right? Those two intervals. Okay? Now, there is this, though. So I want to know not only where is it positive, but where is it also 0, right? When we see that inequality symbol, where is it greater than or equal to 0? So this interval right here, okay, keep in mind, -3 is an asymptote, -1/2 is a 0. So how would I write that interval then to answer my question? Yep. I can't include the -3 no matter what because it's an asymptote. Okay? It's not where it's equal to 0. It's just an asymptote. That -1/2 is a 0, though, so I do want to include that because I wanted to know where is it greater than or equal to 0. And then I got this other interval over here, but again, 1 is an asymptote, right? So what's that interval? Yeah, don't include the 1 up to infinity. and then do our little union in between those like we've always done. And that would be your answer for that particular problem then. Those two intervals, -3 to -1/2, including the -1/2, and then 1 to infinity, not including the 1. Those two intervals are where this is greater than or equal to 0. All right, I'm going to give you guys another one here to try. I'll leave this one factored again. All right, and let's do that. Let's do that one less than 0. Not less than or equal to, but just less than 0. See if we can do it. And let's just jump right to our sign chart here, too. I think you guys probably at this point can just start putting this together right away. Bless you. Okay, so I need to have -3, 1, 0, and -1. So -3, -1, 0, 1. So -3, is it a 0 or an asymptote? It's a 0. Solid circle there. -1, 0 or asymptote? Asymptote, careful. 0, is it a 0 or an asymptote? Asymptote. That's kind of funny. 0 is not a 0. 1, 0 or asymptote? That's a 0. So how many intervals are we looking at here now? 5. Okay. So sometimes I do these little lines to start with just to break it all up so it's a nice little visual. Notice how I make the zeros solid lines and I make the asymptotes dotted lines. That's, again, just a little visual cue for me, and that works for you guys. Go ahead and do that too. But just to remind myself what's an asymptote and what's a 0, so I know whether to include it or not when I'm done. So, okay. So it's a number times a number divided by a number times a number. Pick your fave. Now, something to note on this one, because you can save yourself a little bit of grief here. X plus 3 squared. Always positive, right? Anytime you square something that makes it positive. So what I would do on this one, before I do anything else, even start thinking about, picking that first number, it's like, all right, I'm just going to lay this thing out first. So all I got to do is put the little pluses and minuses into stuff later. And that left little parenthesis for every single one of these is going to be what? A positive, a plus. So just knock that one out first. And then all we got to do is worry about the other 3 each time. Okay? So I bet we can do this pretty quickly then. So if I've got a number less than -3, x minus 1, is that positive or negative? Negative x, negative x plus 1, negative. So this interval overall is what? Negative. Okay, next one. Pick, I don't know, like -2. All right, x minus 1, negative. X, negative. X plus 1, negative. So again, negative. Negative divided by a positive. Because you got negative times negative down there. Okay, next one. X minus 1. Still negative. X. Still negative. X plus 1. That one's positive now. So this interval is positive. Okay, next one. 0 and 1. X minus 1. Negative x, positive, and x plus 1, positive. So that one is negative. And this last one, everything's plus. So positive. Okay, so there's your sign chart. So where is it less than 0? Nope. It's not -3 to -1 to start with. Right. Even though these are solid circles, and yes, those are zeros, look at the inequality symbol I'm working with this time. I want it to be just less than 0. So just negative, I don't want the places where it's exactly 0. So I gotta skip over those, right? So negative infinity to negative 3, union, negative 3 to negative 1, and then what's my other negative interval? 0 to 1. And I don't include anything. There are no brackets. So in general, when you have an inequality symbol that doesn't have the or equal to little part on it, there should be no brackets anywhere. It should be all parentheses because you don't include the zeros or the asymptotes, any of them. So it should look something like this then. You just find those intervals, it's a parenthesis, and you go. Okay. I'm going to have you guys work through one more of these, and then I think we'll be good. Okay? And I want to have one where you factor, but also I'd like to have one where you kind of pull some stuff together here. Oh. Nope, I almost forgot something. We need